Hello. Hi, my name is Dr. Sharnael and Sihon, and welcome to our channel. Today is going to be a fun day, and Craig and I, we weren't even going to do this together. Craig had something to do, and last minute he was able to join us, so I'm very happy to have our co-host here. And of course, Megan is a pretty much regular here, so we're really excited. And I had Megan coming on because she's friends with Robert, who is our guest today. So we just decided to have a little family time and just hang out and like get to know Robert and hang out with all of you guys and just have a little fun Thursday. How about that? You guys
Absolutely.
good?
Yeah.
You good? You
I'm
good?
looking
You
forward
good?
to I've had to go through some inner healing, Sharnael, because I wasn't on the graphic when you were advertising it. So my ego.
Yeah, well, I had already had the graphic because
I
you
know,
couldn't
I know,
come
but
along. You were busy doing army stuff.
we're all taking hits at the moment. So okay,
Definitely,
that's fine.
doing all that army stuff. And so, but then last minute, it was like, oh no, I could be on there. I'm like, dude, I got it all over the place, but please come on with us and hang out. And yeah, so without further ado, I do want to just remind people hit the subscribe, likes, loves, all the things, give us some love, and that helps with the algorithms. You can definitely go to swiftfire.org, get on the newsletter. That way, you know of all the shows that are coming up and have replays of all the ones coming back. There's some great resources there as well. We do have a membership now, and we've been doing member meetings, which have been super fun. We're doing like destiny readings and Q&As and really building a community where we can all hang out and just talk freely and ask questions and learn together and get to know one another wherever you guys are. A lot of you are here. Lisa's here, and there's other members. Everyone who's Deborah's on here as a member. I just want to give a shout out to all the members who have been so loyal and helpful to keep us going and help the channel keep going. I just love you guys. Feel free to sign up as a member and or help with donations. I guess that's the thing too we can do. We just found out about a couple weeks ago. I'm like, what? I could have been doing this. But so yeah. And Craig, do you have anything that you would like to share before? And then I'm going to have Megan speak, and we're going to get to the meat of what we're talking about today with Robert. So we'll just go around real quick.
Yeah, I'm super happy I'm here. I made it. I just love how we're meeting all these new people. Robert, it is an absolute joy and a pleasure to meet you for the first time. I originally heard you on the Journey to Truth podcast, I think it was. You have been on that one, yeah? Big fan of Tyler and Aaron. And I remember hearing your story on that, and I think I've followed you ever since. So to be able to talk to you, I say face to face, whatever this is, I'm super honoured. And Megan, as always, it's brilliant to talk to you. And like I say, we've got quite a good team here, haven't we?
Yes, of course.
That's super exciting.
Hey, Megan.
Hi. Yeah, I'm excited. I was saying I don't know how we're going to get a word in edgewise because I know Robert talks and I know Craig will get along with him really well. And I have had Robert on my channel before and talked about his mom's experience. And yeah, there's a lot to uncover. And I think one thing that I'd like to touch on is the emotional aspect of it and how the weight of it, how it affected your mom, how it affected your family. Because I think I can't speak for you guys, but I know this, like that we're all about healing. And I think talking about the emotional trauma is very important. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people have been through a lot more that they're not even either 100% remembering. And there's, a lot of people have been triggered and a lot of bleed through of remembering in the last 3 years specifically. There's been some sort of popping on. And so, yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. And so, Robert, I actually, I reached out. I'm trying to remember how we connected. I think Megan might have told me about you. And I think if I'm correct, I don't want to say this wrong, but Laura Eisenhower had you on before or something. Have you been on her show? Okay. I want to say maybe I saw that graphic. I didn't get to watch the show, and I don't really get to watch anybody's shows, to be honest. But yeah, so I was like, hey, we're always looking for cool people and cool stories to listen and hear what people have experienced and what they're going through. And So yeah, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and some of your background? I literally don't know anything except for backyard UFO. That's what I got from the graphics that I've seen, and that you're really nice based on what Megan said. So let's do this. Yay!
Awesome. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here meeting all of you and Megan, everyone. Yeah, a little bit about me. I'm not a man of titles. Nothing I've done in the past defines me for who I actually am whatsoever. But with that being said, people need titles to understand people's backgrounds and where we're coming from. But trust me when I say none of these things define me whatsoever. They're just titles. So I grew up in southern New Jersey here in the United States. Around 16, 17 years old, I became a pastor. I went to Bible college, ordained youth minister, blah, yada, yada, yada. Started a Christian heavy metal band. We got signed, record deal, traveling all around the country, playing shows every night, yada, yada, yada. Eventually, I ended up moving to Turkey in the Middle East for 2 years, where I taught English and learned ancient Islam and things of this nature, and studied Mesopotamian, yada, 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 Göbekli Tepe, yada, yada, yada. Came back to the States. Then I got a warehouse job working with doors and frames, a commercial door and frames. I was the manager, doing that for 5 years. Then I lost my job, and then I found something really incredible, and it opened up a door that I was waiting for 30 years to open. And I created a video, and now I'm here in the disclosure community.
Awesome. So what was the video? What's the video about?
Well, in 1991, April 21st, my family has something quite remarkable happen to us. April 21st, 1991, 10:18 p.m., we lived in Lower Alois Creek in southern New Jersey, not far from the Delaware River. The creek behind our house was the Lower Alois Creek, which is directly connected to the Salem County nuclear plant. Very, very close. We lived in a very marshy backwoods area, a lot of foxtails, etc. And we were out in the country, not a lot of houses. There was my house, and directly next door, there was my aunt's house. Behind both of our houses, there was a thin line of trees. And just beyond that line of trees, there was an old wood bridge, one car at a time. And the creek was right there. And that's where this incident took place. So, April 21st, 1991, 10:18 p.m., my aunt that was next door getting ready for bed went into her bathroom in the upstairs part of her house. And as she was getting ready to use the bathroom, she looked out her bathroom window, and she noticed, and before I continue, it was raining. The cloud coverage obtained was 1,200 foot, and it was raining, 10 o'clock at night in April. All right, it was dark. So she sees above the tree line maybe a telephone pole or two in height reference, but on a 45-degree angle looking up at it, she noticed this elongated black triangular object with 3 blue lights on the corners of it and a white bright light in the center of it, just sitting there, completely still, completely silent. She goes, wonder what that is. She walks back into her bedroom, 1991. She picks up her landline. We didn't have cell phones back then. And she calls my mother next door, who was watching a Phillies baseball game with 2 of her girlfriends. I was upstairs sleeping in my bed as a 3.5-year-old would. I was 3.5 years old at the time of this incident. With that being said, my mother hears the phone ringing in the kitchen. My mother goes back to the kitchen, which was the back of the house, facing the direction of this craft. She picks up the phone, and it's my aunt, and she says, Beth Ann, look out the back window. There's something just hovering there. And my mom, she looks out, and she goes, oh my God, what is that? What is that? But really, really loud, the excitement and wonder and awe. Her 2 girlfriends that were watching the baseball game, they get up, being young, nosy girls. My mother was 22-year-old single mom, just to put that out there for everyone. 22 years old. And her friends were young. My aunt was 38 years old, also a single mom. So her two friends go running. What is it? What is it? What is it? I heard the commotion. I heard people literally sprinting to the back of the house, and I stood up on my bed. I had a window right there. I could peek right out there. So as they're all watching this object, completely silent, this entire incident, from the moment my aunt saw it to what happened next, only lasted 5 to 6 minutes long. It was a very short thing. Now, there's no telling of how long that craft was hovering there for. That we do not know, but for what we saw it was 5 to 6 minutes. So they're all watching it. Then what happened all simultaneously, all within like a second. It's really hard to explain, but I'm going to do my best for everyone that's listening right now. As we're watching this elongated black triangular object, 3 blue lights and a crazy light source. It was unlike light I've ever seen before coming from the center of it. As we're watching this, completely silent, just hovering there, all of these things happen at once. A beam of light, a ball of light, some sort of light something or another came down onto this craft. Almost in the same instance as it was coming down towards it, red and orange sparks started shooting out of this craft. Then the center of it, that super bright light, imploded on itself. It sucked itself into itself. And the outskirts of the craft exploded as you would imagine a normal standard aircraft to explode, trajectory of 150 yards to about 300 yards, to the point that when we saw this, we all flinched. We thought pieces were going to hit our house because of the 45. We were looking at this object and the angle. No pieces did hit our house, but it looked like it was going to happen. Kind of like when you're watching a firework and you're like, oh no, that's really big, it's going to hit me, but you don't get hit with pieces. Yeah. It was like that. And to give a size description, now I know most people aren't familiar. They haven't been up close to a large military Huey or a chopper, Cobra or something like that. They're not familiar with it, but it was about the size of a very big helicopter, the lengthwise, and it was kind of thin. It wasn't as big and bulky. It was thinner, and it had really sharp angles. And it was raining, so all we could really see was the black being illuminated by the light, but it seemed to be textured, not necessarily smooth, almost like rigid, like black metal, not a smooth coat. And when this thing exploded, whatever was left of it, after the center of it sucked itself into itself and the outskirts exploded, the main body of it or whatever just shot directly down to the ground. My mother instantly hung up the phone and she called 911. And what happened after that has been known as the Lower Aloes Creek incident. And we would have never imagined that making a phone call for help. I'm sorry, what?
What, the lower what incident? Say that again.
The Lower Aloes Creek incident. And that's the name of the crash. And that's also the name of the town, Lower Aloes Creek. Okay. So here in southern New Jersey. And we had no idea that making a phone call asking for help would actually bring so much more to our table, and actually quite the opposite. We would have never been able to imagine that, because at that moment, in that exact time, whether it was a UFO, military vehicle being tested, which this was near a nuclear plant, nothing, that's a no-fly zone, nothing should be flying around there to begin with. Throw that one out there. But regardless of what it is, when you see something like that close explode near you, your first thought, someone just died. My mother hung up the phone, and she was smart enough, and the police report says this, and the investigators, they made this note in the evidence that I found, saying that my mother knew, and she was smart enough not to say it was a UFO because no one would have came and investigated it. She just reported it as some sort of aircraft just exploded behind our house. And yeah, what happened after that? Quite a bit. We had a few visitors come and visit us at our house. Long story short, ended up threatening my mother. And at the crash site, there was a lot going on. The Coast Guard, Gloucester County Coast Guard that patrols the nuclear plant, they had their Coast Guard cutter boat there. Firefighters were involved. The Dover Air Force Base was involved. A lot of people say, oh, it should be a New Jersey base. No, the nuclear plant is on Dover Air Force's base radar. And I do have transcripts of all the military bases that were called when they were asked about this situation. I have all of them but Dover Air Force Base. And we had a gentleman from the Air Force in our living room, and he was coming from Dover Air Force Base. He was also joined by two men wearing black suits and black hats that weren't a part of the Air Force. And then the following day, MUFON came out, the Philadelphia KYW 3-channel news came out, newspapers came out, which is weird because my family remained anonymous this entire thing. Following weeks, the show Sightings, Unsolved Mystery, they came out, did a hypnosis regression, which that's a whole nother ball game. But I don't want to get too much into everything. There's a lot more of what was going on, but I just wanted to leave it there at the night of the crash, what we saw and what happened. But that did open up doors, and it turned out that my mother was actually being taken by these beings. Why were they behind our house to begin with? And the people that came there to investigate, the men in black and the gentleman from the Air Force, they already knew this. At no point did they ask my mom anything about what they saw. First question to come out of the guys wearing these suits, can you draw 3 different types of extraterrestrials? That don't make sense.
Yeah.
Wait, that's the first question they asked her, to draw 3 different types of extraterrestrials.
Yes, I'm being very vague for the sake of time, but let's talk about this. So we can talk about the men in black. I'll go into great detail. I'm going to talk as fast as I can. Megan?
Can I interject before we get too far? The way that you described the light that the craft made, it's unnatural. It's not like a light bulb. It's literally like out of this world, and it probably has a magnetic frequency. Like it's sort of this isn't the right word, but a quantum thing where it's part of their technology where they use magnetic frequencies to beam people up. And so it's interesting, it imploded on itself.
Yeah.
Like it might have pulled, like it was
magnetized.
Yeah.
Magnetized itself and then exploded.
Wow.
Great point.
I gotta meditate on that for a bit. I never thought of it that way. I did know it was from whatever technology. I always thought maybe they had like a fail safe built into it to make it compulse on itself. But what you just said makes even more sense to me. Wow.
Well,
wow.
And I've heard from the military too, and this has been public, where they've seen something and then it like splits and goes or multiple directions. Like one thing comes and then they all disperse and it looks like multiple. So this is anyway, keep going. This is like mesmerizing, interesting.
It's kind of like Tesla technology where each strand of DNA has a magnetic polarity, so they can beam you up and then rearrange it based on like magnets. It's like Tesla.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's what I thought of when I heard that.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
It really does. And thank you for sharing that. I'm shocked you haven't told me that before. That's amazing.
And we know a couple other people personally who've shared their stories. I won't say their names, but just different experiencers describing being like having dreams of being sucked up, and it's the magnets sucking you up.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So to continue let me go from what happened after my mom hung up the telephone. Now it was raining. It was late at night on a Sunday, 10:18. And then as time went on, it got a lot later. My mom was up very late the night before, along with her friends. Keep this in mind. So 10 minutes after my mom made the initial 911 call, police came, took a very brief, very fast little report, where, what, and when. Just, that's what police do. Went to my aunt's house, same thing, and then they left. We didn't see the police from that point. Later on, they did some more questions. I have that written down. I have the articles, blah, blah, blah. But 25 minutes later, and it's important, where we lived, the closest town over was about 15 to 20 minutes to get to. And I have no idea how these people got to our house from Delaware within 25 minutes, when you got to go all the way up Delaware, over the Delaware Bridge, all the way down to New Jersey. I have no idea, but 25 minutes later, 2 black cars pull into our driveway. Out of the one car, gentlemen, clearly Air Force attire. It was actually the first time I ever saw someone in military uniform in person and not just on TV. It stuck with me. Ironically, I ended up going to ROTC when I was in high school, and I wanted to go in the Air Force, then the Marines, and all that stuff. But it just always fascinated me, that experience, because he wasn't necessarily the problem, but the 2 other characters that came out of the second car were these gentlemen, I don't know why I'm calling them that, with black suits and black hats, no sunglasses. It was nighttime. It was raining. Come on, they're not wearing sunglasses. So they come up to the door. My mother, her 2 friends, thought nothing strange about this. We just witnessed an aircraft, something, explode behind our house. Of course, the government and investigators are going to come there. Duh. Anyone knows this. The Men in Black didn't exist in 1991. There was no such thing. The movie wasn't out. It wasn't something talked about. 1991. And X-Files wasn't even out yet. So let me just put that out there, okay? So they hear the knock on the door, but they saw the cars pull in, and they got up from the couch, and they started going towards the door. And when they saw them, they let them right in. They came into our living room. They sat my mother and her 2 girlfriends down on the couch. The gentleman in the Air Force stood off to the side, and 2 men in black were standing there. And they brought out a notepad and a pencil, and they looked at my mom and the 2 other girls, and they said, "Can you draw 3 different kinds of extraterrestrials?" This was a very religious backwoods area, family of Christians and believers. And my family and her friends, we are not UFO people. We never watched that kind of stuff. It was just not in our vocabulary. That it wasn't our life. That wasn't what we had knowledge of or we were even into. But when the Men in Black said that, the 2 other girls, not my mother, but the 2 other girls started laughing so hard. They were cracking up like, what is this? Is this a joke? That's how they were reacting. And, one thing I do want to mention, everyone wants to know as much as they can about the Men in Black. And the way they were holding the pencil just wasn't right. A lot of people are, were they human? Are they clones? Are they extraterrestrials? Whatever. What they are is awkward and very abnormal human behavior. At the same time, militaries and governments and psychops, they do this sometimes to get into people's head to control the narrative. I understand that as well, but the Air Force gentleman wasn't doing that. It was these 2 guys in the black suit. They are awkward. The guy from the Air Force, he was no different than us, in my personal opinion. So, Mom's 2 girlfriends were laughing. At this point, it was 25 minutes later. It's just about 10:40 at night. They were all out the night before partying until like 4 a.m. in the morning. They were tired and exhausted. And because they were laughing and stuff, they said, "We're going to go ahead and go. It's getting late." They weren't concerned. They didn't think my mother was in danger or anything like that. They saw the same thing they did. They thought, they were just trying to get information. I don't know. They just dismissed it. This is the kind of people we lived around back then. So my mom's 2 girlfriends, they get up, they grab their purses, and as they're leaving, my mother starts to draw 3 different kinds of extraterrestrials. So she drew one that she called the Greys, typical gray. She wasn't very artistic, so it was like just about stick figures, but like a next step up. The second one was one she called Nordics. It just looked like a normal human being, no surprise there. And then she drew one that was called the Blues. And after drawing it with a pencil, she actually took a ballpoint pen and like kind of, we had a pen on the table, a blue pen, and she kind of filled it in to symbolize the blues. And that was it. That was it. After that, it turns out the gentleman that was in the Air Force was trained in regression therapy. And I know, whoa, what? Guy in the Air Force trained in regression therapy? Well, yeah, for soldiers that have post-traumatic stress, and they need to know what that soldier went through, but he's too traumatized and he can't focus, but they need that intel. Oh, yeah, they are definitely trained in this. They took my mother into my playroom at the time. It was upstairs, a smaller room, not as open and as exposed as our living room. And the two men in black stood off to the side now. And the gentleman in the Air Force did a brief 4 to 5 minute regression. Unfortunately, that was the exact moment. My mother, up to that point, completely clueless of the extraterrestrial existence, phenomena, UFOs, none of that. In that regression was the first time she came to the realization that she was being taken by these beings. Unfortunately, the two men in black were standing right off to the side, and they had everything that they needed from that point. So after that, they went back down to the living room, and the men in black asked my mother, "Do you have any questions?" My mother said yes. And the first question my mother asked the men in black, as a mother trying to protect her children, "Are these things dangerous?" Men in black replied, "If they were dangerous, do you think we would still be here?" My mom said, "Okay." Keep in mind, my mom's just 22 years old, high school degree. You know, and when you're traumatized after seeing a UFO crash, you know, you're not thinking clearly. And, you know, it's hard to come up with questions on the spot after just realizing that not only did you see that, but these things are taking you as well. And it was a lot to handle for her in that moment. And her second question, very logical: why don't people know about these things? The men in black replied, this is 1991. I have to make that clear. The men in black replied, "We are doing everything we can by preconditioning. Within the next 10 years, you will see signs of UFOs and extraterrestrials in all media outlets, movies, music, books, magazines, radio shows, blah, 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 blah." I'm sure they would have said social media and YouTube and all that stuff if it existed back then, but it didn't. So it is what it is. But now that's what they're doing. Now they got more platforms to manipulate. But anywho, so the third question my mother asked the men in black after having this realization that these beings just took her, she said, "When these beings are taking me and I'm physically not here, what would happen if something happened to my baby, me, 3.5-year-old son, or my elderly grandfather that she took care of, who was there, but he was like 90 years old man, you know? And what would happen if I'm gone and they needed me and I'm not here?" The men in black replied, "They use small grays that stay behind. And if anything was to happen to your baby or your grandfather, they would have you back." And the men in black snapped their fingers like, so once again, awkward, like, ha ha ha, look at what we can, like they learned a new trick. Like I've never seen someone so proud and arrogant to snap their fingers. You know, it's they're weird, they're awkward, whatever they are.
They kind of act like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, no.
Like, I'm not even kidding.
Android type.
Trying really hard to be human. If you've ever seen him walk, like even the clothes he wears, it's like, okay, what can I do to look like blend in or look normal?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the men in black, from my understanding, can either be clones or a reptilian human hybrid, and they run on hive consciousness. So they don't have original thought, it's like a consciousness that comes from a computer server and gives them instructions or directions. And that's why their answers are so like flat, no emotion, and they're not really human. They're missing the soul. They're missing the important part.
I would agree with that. Something was off with them, and there was no emotion, no smiling, nothing like that, and very robotic, like Zuckerberg, as I call him. So, so my mom said, "Okay, like what do you say? what can you say? There's nothing she could do at that moment." And then the men in black said, "Do you have any other questions?" My mom said, "No." And the men in black said, "Okay, now tomorrow there's going to be a lot of news agencies, UFO investigators, media outlets, newspapers that are going to come here. And you will say it was a helicopter, or we will take your son away." My mom said, "Okay, I understand." And that's exactly what my mother did. Ironically, in the evidence that I found, only after 30 years of having no evidence, I finally found 6 pages of transcripts. Really, really compelling evidence. Quite compelling. And in there, it started to all come out. And my family remained anonymous. And just as they said, all of these people came out. And the moral of my family's story is the men in black and the agencies are the ones tipping off the media outlets. They knew these groups would come out, not because we called them or told anyone. We remained anonymous. Whole family, my aunt too. And then the next day, news cameras, news reporters, people in suits taking pictures all around our house. My aunt next door, she's a super Christian, very lovely, soft-spoken, sweetheart of a woman, not the spotlight. She was a realtor in Century 21 at the time, and she had to take her phone off the hook because there was calls coming from Los Angeles, like unsolved mystery sightings and all that. And she just took it off because she didn't want to be charged for the long distance bill. I'm not making this up. I swear. And that's how it was. We were country folks. We were, remote people. And where we are from, your character is everything. You don't go around talking about insane things like a UFO crashing behind your house or being abducted by extraterrestrials. So the point of that is, just as the men in black predicted, because they're the ones putting the narrative out there, and they were ones to push this helicopter, and all these groups came out, and the news agencies played that narrative. But the kicker is no helicopter, and the MUFON articles, at the top of the main thing, you'll see a black helicopter. But in the articles, they say they called FAA, all the military bases. No planes were missing. No helicopter should have been there. It's all documented that it wasn't a helicopter. But that's like the narrative they're spinning. And my mom was on the news, and at first they were trying to say, well, it's a meteorite. And my mom said, she actually said this on the news, like meteorites don't just hover there and then go down. And she said, my mom on the news said, I'm willing to lay my life down on it. It was a helicopter because of the threat that was made. But no helicopter was found. And this is how they play the narrative game. And obviously it wasn't a helicopter. Helicopters are very loud, no doubt about it. And they don't look like that, and they don't explode like that. And in the crash site, there was no fire. What? Name me one helicopter or aircraft that would explode and not leave burn marks and fires. Yeah, it was raining that night, but that don't matter. Traditional aircraft, when they explode, whether it's raining or on water, the water will be burning. So where was the fire? Something interesting.
And they didn't know like who the pilot was, if there were any like actual real people flying it missing. But what's interesting is the men in black are connected to the CIA, who's in charge of covering up UFO stuff. So when they say, and they're in bed with Hollywood too, so they already had all those plans to release all those movies and everything. And then of course we know that they are connected to the mainstream media as well. So it was really, interesting connection there too.
Yeah, and just briefly, now a lot of people are probably wondering what was actually going on at the crash site. And if my family was in the house, how could I possibly know what was happening at the crash site? Well, after 30 years, once I found the evidence, I made a little documentary, 15 minutes long. I didn't even have YouTube Premium. I couldn't make a long video. I did the maximum, 15 minutes long, and that was it. And in there, the articles I presented, people that were involved and that was there and just thought it was something strange, they all started to come forward. It turns out the fire chief was actually a cousin of mine. All right. A little fun fact. So let me go over what happened in the time frame. I gave you the time frame. Also, at 2 a.m. in the morning, my house, my mother was on the phone with 4 search and rescue helicopters all the way until like 6 a.m. in the morning. One of them belonging to the Delaware State Police, and it had a thermal camera on it. So for this just to be absolute nothing, 4 helicopters, that's a lot of taxpayers' dollars, isn't it? For absolutely nothing. Very strange. But they didn't find anything, and I'm going to tell you why they didn't find anything. So it was Sunday night. My mom made the phone call around 10:18. The firefighters came onto the scene 40 minutes afterwards. By the time they got there, lottie-dottie, got the trucks ready, drove all the way out there. Like I said, we're out in the middle of nowhere. It's raining Sunday night. Probably some of those guys were having a good time themselves, thinking, whoo, it's Sunday night. It's raining, quiet night out here. Oh, not tonight, boys. So they get in the fire truck, and as they're going down the road that it happened on, which was closed that night, it was shut down, and it's still closed today. It's been closed ever since, the road and the bridge. Important fact, and anyone can go there and see it and look it up as well. So as the firefighters were approaching, the fire truck was really high off, and in April, the foxtails were very low at the time. So they could see over, and as they're heading up towards the bridge and getting closer to the creek, off to the left, they saw some gouges and markings in the marsh, fresh. And once they got up a little further, they noticed a Coast Guard cutter boat sitting in the creek, and there was an armed Coast Guard gentleman that was standing down, kind of flagging them out. Once they got up closer to see what the Coast Guard gentleman wanted, they noticed a massive black tarp laid out over like the marsh. And as they were going up, they're like, yo, what's going on? And the Coast Guard said the situation is under control, and he ordered them to turn back around. So that's what the firefighters did. They said, well, that was strange. That was weird. They drive all the way back to the firehouse, which we didn't have bars. We didn't have restaurants. We didn't have a mini mart. We had nothing. The firehouse was the local hangout place. That's where everyone was. And there was 2 nosy country women that were there in the firehouse when the firefighters got back. And they said, well, that was strange. And you can't say that to a country girl and expect them not to know. So they did 2 separate shifts, and the one girl went. Now, when she went, by this time period, it was more around like 11:20 by the time she got there. And she noticed a tree cutting service that was there removing trees. She goes, okay, that's weird. At that point, also, they had the road closed. When the firefighters were getting there, they didn't have a road closed yet. After the firefighters left, they put up a road closed sign at the end to stop people from going down there. Then she goes all the way back to the firehouse. And then the other girl hears, and, oh, I have to see this. So she gets in the car. And this would have been around, 12:40-ish, probably, her arriving to the same point up to the thing. And she saw a black flatbed truck, not military, standard black flatbed truck, absolutely normal. The tree cutting service was actually a local tree cutting service, believe it or not. So she saw this black flatbed truck, and she saw the yellow lights on it. There are no street lights on this road in this area. And she noticed a black tarp on the back of the flatbed, and that was it. And then she went back. So judging off of that, they already had everything loaded. Not that they got every piece, and I know there's still debris there, 110%. There's no way, but they had the site mostly cleared within 2 hours, according to this time frame of what was going on. So by like, let's say, you know, the latest 12:30, they were out and gone. Search and rescue helicopters, 4 of them came around 2 o'clock in the morning. It was already cleared. It was already cleared. So, yeah, and that was it. And they went around questioning other people. There was one neighbor that said he thought he heard a crash, but he thought it was a gust of wind. And they reassured him that was a helicopter. The police station had 2 other people coming home from work that called the police station that just saw it hovering there. They did not see the explosion, but they just saw it hovering there, and they saw it from a greater distance away. They weren't even on our road. They were, you know, a good ways away. And there were a lot of other witnesses that were involved. I have people that reached out to me that were on the EMS squad that remember that night. And I've had other whistleblowers that worked for the nuclear plant and many other people come forward with quite compelling information that has really gave me the whole story, but it just took me being brave enough to share the little things I had after 30 years of my family and hearing this story and, you know, share my mother and I sharing it with everyone, and a lot of times getting made fun of. And, you know, me as a little kid having nightmares because I couldn't discern. I found out these things are real, and then I'm watching TV and they're showing aliens and stuff. And I was so young, I couldn't use discernment. So I would get scared sometimes when they're making them seem like way scarier than what they are and stuff like that. It was a lot. And my mother went through the most of it. She really made the sacrifice and took the brunt of it all for my safety's sake.
Wow. I mean, that's very detailed. And from what is in the comments here, everyone who's heard this story before is saying that whenever they've heard it, it's always the exact, nothing changes. Like I mean, that's a good sign of, I mean,
authenticity.
I've not doubted
30 years of telling the same story.
I'm curious. So do you feel if she was abducted, and I know the whole like pulling up, and I've had my own missing time experiences and lights and the whole thing. Has she had anything after that happen that she has a recollection of? Did they leave her alone after that, or because a lot of times it's like once you're in there can be a consistency where there's a continuation of that. Did she have anything else happen?
Exactly. No, exactly what you just said. After that first regression, in upcoming days, the Mutual UFO Network came out. They did a regression hypnosis, and the stuff my mom was saying about, you know, the program she was in and different beings and genetics for a 22-year-old country girl with a high school education where we lived. It was insane, absolutely mind-blowing, wild stuff. That's why the show Sightings and Unsolved Mystery, they came out. They recorded her under regression, and they were going to blur out her face because once again, but she signed all the waivers, but that never aired, ironically.
Mm-hmm.
And the investigator, Richard Butler, the investigator that covered this case from MUFON, he was good friends with Bud Hopkins, who was also involved with this. And during that same time, Linda Cortell, the Brooklyn incident of the woman levitating out of her apartment building, and the ambassador or some political person seeing it from their limousine. Richard Butler and Bud Hopkins were also working on that, and they were also shut down, harassed, and laughed out of the community after that because of these 2 men in black. They were the same men in black following his work from my case to the Linda Cortell case. All of these things are all connected, and you in the articles about my family's thing, you see these cases as well. They are the cases that are like the next story, the next paragraph, you know? So all this was happening at once, and through these regressions, once my mom had that initial thing, prior, it was nothing but strange dreams. She used to wake up with strange scars. My grandmother would dismiss it. You must have scratched yourself. All the strange health issues, you know, dismiss, etc. But after that first regression, my mother remembered everything of every experience from there up until the day she passed away. And my mother had some serious health issues. When she was 25 years old, she had her lung collapse. I believe this was from being brought from this to that, from this to that. And it's actually something that happens with divers and astronauts. How would that happen to my mom, a perfectly 5'9", skinny, beautiful, healthy young woman? How?
It's from the pressure changes. Yep, you're right.
And on top of that, she bled constantly. She had her menstrual cycle extremely young, 9 years old, and that's when the hybrid program started. My mother would bleed 3 weeks out of 4 every single month for her entire life. She bled constantly, and it's from everything they were doing, extracting embryos, putting them back in, extracting them, putting them back in, extracting them, putting them back in. My mom had her tubes tied, hoping that that would stop it, and she still miscarried 5 times. They would not stop. And unfortunately, my mother only could find one solution to make it stop, and there wasn't a community like there is today. And, you know, she found coping mechanisms like we all do, and everything is a coping mechanism, and nothing's healthy for us by any means, not even our food we consume. You know, none of it's good for us. So everyone has their own coping thing. But you know, from the laughter, the few times she would open up and seeing people's reactions and not believing her, the worst experience I remember, I was about 6 or 7. We were at our house around a fire. She had a bunch of friends over. Someone brought up a Steven Spielberg movie, I think like Close Encounters or something, around the fire. And my mom said, well, I got a story. And she starts saying it, and everyone was calling her a crazy bee, and you're insane, laughing at her. And she got up and she said, I'm not an effing liar. And she started crying, and she walked off. And I was just a little boy, and I knew my mommy was telling the absolute truth. I couldn't do anything about it. And that's the moment I learned I need to shut up. Otherwise, I'm never going to have friends. I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to make anything of myself. And I just need to shut up about this. But I would make the same mistake my mom did, thinking I knew people and I trusted them. Like my friends I've known for 6, 7 years, I'll tell them and they give me that look. I'm like, come on, you know me. Like after 6 years, I'm telling you this for a reason, and you still give me that look of like, you know, and even if they didn't say they didn't believe, you can see, you can feel it, you know, you can tell someone's reaction. So yeah, it was really hard for my mom, and the emotions were tough. It was a lot to handle for me, and yeah.
Something that struck me when you were talking before is that you were your mum was told that, bearing in mind it was 1991, that in 10 years' time you're going to see this stuff everywhere. So clearly that tells me that there has been some kind of agenda to put this stuff out there. But knowing what we know, do you think this would have been some kind of controlled narrative, you know, used to kind of manipulate us? And do you think now, obviously, because that didn't really happen, obviously, if you think 10 years after that was 2001, that's when 9/11 happened. Go on.
The distraction. And just like 2020 and 2019 with the Pentagon and the disclosure that was going to happen, something happened in the world that shut us all down. Oh, another distraction. Every 10 years, every time disclosure is about to happen, because they haven't quite figured out the narrative they want to spin. And there's too many people that are awake that wouldn't fall for a blue beam. Yeah. They're not falling for Project Mockingbird or Looking Glass or anything else. And they have to keep revising and upgrading. Yeah. And okay, if we can't get away with blue beam, let's just infiltrate the disclosure community.
Yeah. 9/11 was the biggest false flag. And I was 9 years old. They wanted to use me for breeding programs, and that was in 2001 when I was 9. So I was abducted then too.
Wow, 2001. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Do you think it comes in like waves and cycles then?
everything has a season, right? This is Pastor Rob coming out. There's a season for everything.
Yeah,
Nothing happens overnight. It's all cycles. This is the way of the universe. It's cycles. Nothing happens overnight. That's why they call them projects. No project is done in 1 hour. Projects are things that take a long time over a cycle. Think tanks. Everything right now is being ran off of a think tank. That's what's going on. That's why people are saying, how are these people predicting this and that? It's not predicted, it's planned.
Yeah.
It's planned.
So going back, there's a question here, and I'm just going to jump in. So I worked with a lady. I was called to go to Wyoming. I've had 7 miscarriages. We haven't talked about this, and I think Craig might know, or Megan. But so I've always kind of wondered about all of that, and then maybe that's a big, huge discussion. But I was actually called to go to Wyoming because there was a pastor there when I was in ministry. Had not talked about this to anybody or anything, just was there for a ministry trip. And while I was there, the lady came, the pastor actually happens to be the pastor of Kanye West's church. That's where he went to, or started going to, or working with. And when he was running for president, she was actually going to be the vice president of the birthday party. So, and this lady is not crazy. Like, she's normal. She's,
That's
anyway.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The birthday party. Yeah, that's brilliant.
But that was, that was later after I was there. I was there. I want to say, God, I have to go back and look to see when it was. But when I was there, she'd called me in a room to sit down and talk to me because she needed help trying to figure out how to minister to 40 case women that she was there as a counselor for, who had all had the same programs that they were being implemented, and then the babies, they would be in the middle of the night, and then the babies would be gone, and they would do a sonogram and there's nothing there. And they were using them multiple times, and she just had like one person come and then another person come, and then the next thing she has got 40 people, and she's asking me, who had no experience to my knowledge of any of this, but called me in to come talk to them about this and support her and support them. Or, I didn't end up talking to any of them. I did discuss with her, and it was a little bit like, oh my gosh, that's interesting and strange. And I wasn't like, oh, I don't believe you. I mean, I 100% believed her. If you could have talked to her and saw the way she was, just like you. I mean, you're humble, you're nice, like detailed. I've studied about lying and FBI stuff, and I worked with the police on stuff like that. And you know what lying looks like, and you can feel it, or I can. And so one of the girls, Christy Grubbs, had brought this up, and I'm curious too. Did she have children after? And also, what if you're somehow part of it? Like, have you ever thought, like, maybe I got something in me, like, I know we're all hybrids in some, look, everybody's a hybrid, but anyway, speaking to that a little bit.
Yeah. So, it was a lot. Let's talk about the miscarriages. And I just want to go over a story, and I'm going to try. It kind of grosses me out. There's certain things I've seen in my life I want to forget. Seems like everyone wants to remember everything. I've spent my life trying to forget. Okay. I was about 15 years old one day, and my mother, physically, I'm her only child. She never had kids. She had her tubes tied, but I was about 15 years old, and we were home, and I heard her in the bathroom crying for an abnormal time. And one thing about these experiences, my mother would always cry for her babies. I can actually go over one of her experiences, just one of many, of like what she was seeing, the beings she was interacting, her hybrid children. I can describe them for you, blah, blah, all that good stuff. But one day I heard her crying in the bathroom for a long time. She was in there for an hour, and I just finally knocked, and I'm like, this is driving me crazy, 15 years old. And I opened it up, and she was sitting next to the toilet just crying, saying, I miss my babies. I miss my babies. And I looked, I'm like, what the heck I was a 15-year-old boy. I didn't understand what was going on. I looked in the toilet, and what I saw, you can't. That's it. And it wasn't.
Yeah, yes, I can.
I know embryos and fetuses look like aliens to begin with, but what was in there?
Wasn't a human embryo.
It was something else. I don't know. I don't even want to talk about it right now. It's just very disturbing and uneasy. I'm getting all jittery. I don't like talking about it. And there's a few other situations of things I saw, with my mother, etc. And going on, for example, one of the experiences my mom had, waking up on a table, seeing these tall, white, gray extraterrestrials, very tall, but they had very white skin. They would be standing way off in the side, and she would see her children lined up over there, and she would be communicating with them telepathically and begging. She would always beg the larger ones, "Can I please have one? Can I please have one? Can I please have one?" And they said they won't be able to survive on Earth. She was always begging for them. Some of them, she said, looked like Sloth from the Goonies. Some of them were highly deformed and very weird looking. Some looked very, very human, but would have like black eyes. And others looked very gray extraterrestrial with very minor human features. But, she was kind of forced, and she didn't look at it this way, but she was kind of forced to interact with these beings to show them human emotion. Apparently, these beings are trying to create something that can feel. And because these beings are used for my mother's embryos, regardless of how much gray they are, they need love and compassion. They need it. They need it. And if you're created by something with love and compassion, regardless how much of a percent of anything else you are, you're still going to need that for your development. So they had my mom kind of playing mom, like, all right, hybrid children, come on, it's time to have your human experience for 1 hour. And all right, now go back to doing whatever they do, wherever they are. The worst part, I don't even know if they're alive. Some of it, some hybrids, we don't have the longest shelf lives. We're created in tubes, and it is what it is. And so I know nothing about them, and it really breaks my heart knowing that I have siblings that I can't be connected to, and a big part of what I do is to connect to them, regardless of the ones that created them and their agenda. I don't care. Anything that has 5% of my mother's genetics in it, not having brothers and sisters, I want to love that, because that's all I have of my mother left, because she passed away 2 months before I found the evidence validating my family's claims. After 30 years, 2 months prior, she passed away, 2 months too late. So I made it my mission to help other women like my mother. She was 51 years old. And
when she passed, she was 51?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. How did she pass?
Botched kidney surgery. Hospital killed her. Yeah.
No.
Malpractice.
Yeah, it was. It's on her death certificate, but I was so involved, and the same
What's
time.
On her death certificate?
Huh?
Malpractice is on the death certificate?
It says the cause of death was,
botched surgery.
Yeah. It's worded different, but essentially yes. So.
It's worded in a way that doesn't incriminate the.
That is so young, and for you to not have your mom, and for her, that's just That's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. Thank you. And were you going to say something, Craig?
I know, and Megan looked like you're going to say something. I was going to sort of shift gears a little bit. Megan, have you got something to say on it before?
I was just going to add that if you have humanoid genetics and you're not loved or given affection, then your nervous system won't function properly or won't develop properly. And I know that's a lot of the problem with the kids in the underground and in the hybrid programs, is they haven't been loved and nurtured, so they can't function properly. And I know that there's a process to get them back to normal functioning, like socialization and love, before they're adopted into other families. So it makes sense what Robert said, with his mom giving them affection and stuff.
Well, we've had Mary Rodwell on, I don't 4 or 5 times, 3 or 4 times now too. And if anyone, if you guys want to read her books or check her out, like this is very consistent with other lots and lots, thousands of testimonies. Mary Rodwell is amazing. I think she has 3 or 4 books out and lots of YouTube stuff. Robert, have you met Mary?
No, but I actually just got done interviewing someone that has worked with her and done
We need to connect
regressions
you
from
guys.
Australia, and I know who she is.
I really want to connect you with her. I mean, she would be really a good resource for you, for sure.
Yeah,
Do you have any memory of seeing anything or any abductions yourself? Because a lot of times this goes in a bloodline situation. Or have you had any regression to or weird dreams or flashbacks bleed through anything?
That's a very complex, loaded question that can go for a while. But you could say yes. Do I have recalls of being abducted and taken onto a ship? No. But have I seen physically extraterrestrials and other things and have had memories come back, of things chasing me on another planet and wild stories? Yes, I have all that and my earthly ancestor memories as well. That's a whole nother can of worms there. But I have seen a lot physically, and I have had a lot. Now, for the most part, I do not remember my dreams. I only have about 4 reoccurring dreams that I remember. I don't remember any other dreams. Never, 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 never. Sometimes I wake up, I think I got it, and it's gone. I can't even write stuff down. Something does not allow me to remember those dreams, but some strange things happen. But before we go on more, I do want to talk about one thing with my mother. And because, going through this and the process of not being able to be with her children and, being taken by beings and all the damage that was being done to my mother, the reason she was hanging out with these Nordic beings and mantis beings and one she called the blues and even some of the big snakes, some of the Dracos that had an interest in her for some reason, not negative, ironically. They needed her just as much as these tall, white, gray aliens. Everyone needed something from my mother for some reason. And it is a lineage kind of sort of thing, and it is maternal. These things do run through mothers. That's what I've learned, and that's a whole nother road to go down, not important. But my mother dealt with this, and she found out a way to make the hybrid stop. And that was by drinking alcohol. When she had alcohol in her bloodstream, they couldn't use the embryos. They couldn't make these creations. And they would, she was basically sabotaging herself to stop that. And because she didn't have people like this community and Mary Rodwell and all these others to talk to, she had no other option on how to, meditate through it, how to get through it. She had no one to talk to, no one to help her. And I just think about all the amazing people in the community today and all of the 3 of you. My mom missed it all. She missed all this, and it breaks my heart. The 2 months, that's when the Pentagon released the UFO footage, 2 months after she died. The same week that they released the UFO footage is when I found the articles. Some guy in Sweden randomly posted them up. Isn't that weird? So it was just if all these people were around back then, maybe my mother's life would have been so different. And that's why I'm going over and beyond. And unfortunately, due to the drinking, these situations would still happen, just not as often when she was under that alcoholic influence, unfortunately. But that does a lot of damage to your body. And that's why she has some kidney problems. But that's not what killed her. The hospitals giving her medication that on her wrist says she was allergic to 5 different times, giving it to her to the point where I had to slap it out the doctor's hands, Ativan. I said, stop, she's allergic. Oh, them making jokes. We'll have to make a t-shirt that says I'm allergic. The things I went through with my mother dying in the hospital and the years prior, it was unbearable. With that being said, the botched kidney surgery. That's what ended up, really doing my mother in. Unfortunately, it was very tough for me. I don't like talking about it. But yeah, so that's it. And she went through a lot. And now I'm realizing only after she's gone, she did it all to protect me. And the weirdest part about all of this, my entire life, I would say, Mom, when can I talk about these things? Mom, when can I do this? When? And she always told me, baby, be patient, be patient, be patient. When you're 33 years old, it will all make sense. She told me my entire life this. And she didn't mean Jesus Christ or anything like that. That was not her intent. And I could have never imagined when I released part 3 of my documentary. That was on August 16th, my 33rd birthday. And it was done and completed. And that was when I started all this. I would never imagine that moment. And I remember being in the hospital next to her bedside and like, Mom, I'm almost 33. You got to stick around. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't. Oh.
Robert and I have mentioned before, like I've noticed in the community where it's like people believe in aliens, like people believe that they're real, but they're not real to them. So it's like people missing the emotional link of like, it's almost like a fad, like it's popular instead of being like real, like this is your life. Like there's so much emotion involved to being abused or being taken aboard ships and, having your genetics experimented with, because it's so far like removed from our society that it sounds like a story instead of something that actually happened. So it's very easy to like make fun of people or, just pish posh on people's stories because there's that emotional trauma, whether it's love or fear. It's usually suppressed so that we can function in this society as normal people. So, but that's something I like about Robert's channel is he interviews everybody. You don't have to be hyped, just everyday normal experiencers. And that's what really, I think, reaches people because it happens to everyday normal people, so.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, yeah, switch up the subject a little bit. I'm sorry. I have to say this. One of the last things my mother said to me before she passed was not to cry. So it gets really, really hard sometimes. So let's switch it up. And
it is okay to cry.
Yeah, I know that, and she didn't mean it that way, but it's just, the emotions of all of it and how things played out. I would have never imagined that she wouldn't be there to celebrate it. Like, she would have been in the documentary. She would be on the interview. She would be doing this interview and not me. No one would even know who I am, and that would be amazing, and it's just a shame. But my mom is working through a lot of people. And my mom's story is helping, and she is here, although for some reason she's so busy talking to everyone else. She doesn't say too much to me. She's a busybody, and she's more powerful now after death than she ever was in life, because now she can't be threatened, and now she can't be mocked and ridiculed, and she is a wreck of nature, and she's having a good time right now, and I know that.
Absolutely. And I think, like I say, you're here doing the work on her behalf. And, like you say, she's still around, most definitely. I mean, what I was going to say before was, and you kind of already answered it, actually, in a way. So many people are waiting for the government to bring disclosure or the government to confirm these things. And let's face it, well, it's not going to happen, certainly not to this degree. And it's people like yourselves and people who have these testimonies, and Megan and Sharnael and all these people who are coming forward telling their stories, no matter how crazy they may seem to the 3D, world. You're all absolute troopers, and you're on the front lines of what needs to happen, because the world needs to know this. It does, but the thing with it is it exposes the government projects that they've known about this for a very, very long time, and they've played a part in the trauma that's been caused. So, I think it's brilliant that we can set up a community where people, experiences who have these issues can come to us or to anybody. People like Mary Rodwell, who is doing the work and helping people get over and kind of make sense of memories or things in the head, in the mind that they have with no explanation. So I just want to say thank you very much for being brave and doing the work. And again, your mum will be very, very proud of you, I'm sure.
Thank you, mate. Really appreciate that.
Right.
Yeah, and going back to what Sharnael was saying, when she was asking, like, Robert, what's your involvement? Do you think there's any possibility? You were getting at it. I don't want to completely duck the question because that's mad sus, mad suspicious, you know. But like you said, Sharnael, we're all extraterrestrials, and until human beings understand that, the world don't need to know what or how I was made until they realize what they are, because I'm not going to be persecuted because of their ignorance and lack of understanding of what they are. And if I'm anything different, I will be crucified for it, and I'm not dealing with that. And so we're all extraterrestrials. But yes, definitely 110%. My mother told me later on, she filled me in some things I'm not going to get into or talk about. But yeah, you know, my mom always said I was the greatest gift ever given to her, and people can take that for what it is. Every mom says it, don't they?
You made it.
Take it. I spent my whole life trying to blend in. I'm not going to come out now. 35 years. Why stop?
I feel the same way. Blending in's boring.
Yeah.
Well, one thing too, I want to ask too, do you have any kind of military people, like your grandparents or anything military in the background?
Family, entire family,
Your entire family.
every war. Yeah. I was in the ROTC. I wanted to be Marines. Like after ROTC, like if you graduated boot camp, you would have a bunch of things, but I wanted to go into the Marines where I would only get one stripe. And my stepfather, he was a Marine. He's essentially the guy that raised me. I do have family. For example, my stepdad, he is a high clearance crane operator that works in Cape Canaveral for Space Force, SpaceX, NASA. He's been in the DUMS working on private things. I'm privy. I've been to the SpaceX work site. I've seen things, and yeah. So come from a long line. You know, my great grandfather, he had no legs. He was like in World War II that he died a long time ago when I was a little kid. Finally met him, stuff like that. My mother's father, Robert Earl White, is the guy I'm named after. So technically, my last name isn't White. This is my government name. But yeah, Robert Earl White was my mother's father, who died when she was 8 years old. He was 40 years old. My mother died at 51. And yeah, so I'm the last one left. My mother had no brothers or sisters. Her father had no. I'm the last one of my genealogy, which is very old. And these beings have been using the same families for a long time. And I'm the one that stops the buck. It's done. Have fun, guys. Go to another planet because you're not getting the genetics from here anymore.
Well, how can we find? Where's your documentary? Is it still out that we can see whatever the
My YouTube channel is Robert Earl White, Order of Light. So Robert Earl White, Order of Light. It rhymes, haha. But if you type in either one, you can find it. I have a playlist, so once you go, I do have a newer video where I categorize the whole entire story in a short little 18-minute video. But I have multiple parts along with some interviews, etc. But I have 3 parts on there, and then I have the one video that is a recap for everyone that wants to save some time and just see glances of the evidence and not reading word for word all the evidence and stuff. That's all on my YouTube under my UFO Crash playlist on there, along with all the other interviews and videos I make and all that good stuff.
Awesome. And someone else is asking too about blood type. What do you think
Yeah,
about blood type
don't
being
matter. They're all extraterrestrial. All blood types are ET. Some are more valuable to other beings to manipulate and use, and some will get abducted more if they have a blood type because it's more universal. But they're all extraterrestrial, and blood don't matter. It's genetics. That's the currency of the universe. Genetics, 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 genetics. That's
Right.
what it's all about. Woo! RH, negative, O, it don't matter what you got. You can have A or B, still get abducted, and still be something else yourself. It doesn't matter. It's all about the genetics. Genetics are fun.
Yeah.
Blood types are just a genetic marker of what DNA you might have. So it's not like, oh, someone's A negative, they're definitely like from the Pleiades, blah, blah, blah. It's just a genetic marker of what possible DNA you might have. So
Absolutely.
You're muted.
you're muted.
We are way past the hour, but I mean, this is just so freaking intriguing. And I mean, I'm going to have to go watch the documentary now. I don't know. I'm sure everybody here is going to run to your YouTube channel and follow it and watch and get more information. And tell us, where can we, do you have a website? Where can we find you? Like, yeah, give us more as we like wrap up here.
All right. YouTube is my main thing. I have a Facebook, but my original one was deleted for no reason, so I had to create another one using Robert Orossi. But if you type in Robert Earl White, I should still pop up. Google algorithms, YouTube, all that, when you type my name into a Google search engine, nothing about me pops up. You got to use DuckDuckGo, Bing, all that, because this story, although there's really nothing wrong, I'm not here cursing, I'm not violent, causing division. It doesn't matter. They do not like this story, and the algorithms are definitely showing their love to me. Yeah, the YouTube is my main thing, and on there in the description, you can find my direct me that has all my other things as well, but I've been banned off of TikTok so many times. I'm done using that. I gave up on Instagram years ago when I was living in the Middle East, and like no one cared, and it was just a waste of time. And I'm trying Twitter, and I don't know. It doesn't matter what platform, as long as my name is Robert Earl White, it's not going to go down. So just check out the YouTube. That's what helps me the most, and that's where I'm the most active and where I'm putting all my content and information. So the YouTube, Robert Earl White, and there you can also find my email if you want to reach out to me, orderoflight777@gmail.com, orderoflight777, yeet yeet. And yeah, so it's been a blast.
And I have all your bio. I'll have everything, which it actually might already be up there. I don't know if Mac put it up there yet, and I have also Craig and Megan and everybody's information and bios too, where you can find them. But any final words, Megan and Craig, before we go? I do want to remind people, please subscribe. Please hit the notification button. If you can, please, if you can consider either being a member or supporting us through a donation or what have you too, that really helps us to keep going. And we do have to pay for graphics and all the things, that editing and blah blah blah. So I picked up your blah 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 and just used it, Robert, but I'm going to take that with me now, blah blah blah. But yeah, so thank you. I want to say thanks to Debbie, Lisa, Stephanie, a lot of people who are supporting us that are here as members. You know, we do a lot in our membership, and you can read up about that on our Facebook page of what all we do in our meetings and sessions and giveaways and that kind of stuff. We're trying to really build a community where people can get together on a regular basis and have conversations, where it's not like we're just the 4 people talking or the 2 people talking, but that you have a voice. Everyone who's listening and commenting, you guys can ask questions face to face and not just put a comment up and ask a question, but really get down to the nitty gritty and have some real conversations. So any bit of support helps for sure. But yeah, and go to swiftfire.org, get the newsletter. That way, you know, we have great shows coming up too, and looking forward to, and we're doing a conference in January. So we have a lot of things coming up. But Megan and Craig, any final words? And Robert, you're so awesome. Thank you so much.
just that I had a great time, and hopefully we'll do some more stuff together, more videos, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Awesome.
I was thinking, Robert, I don't know if have you ever done a Q&A before with the public about your testimony or experiences?
A few times, a little bit.
So I wonder if you come on and do it with our members at some point.
That is
Absolutely.
a great idea. That's
Fancy
a
that? How about
wonderful
that? That'd be cool. Open it up and get some people on and have a conversation with some folks. That'd be cool. So people become members, and I reckon we should arrange that for sure. People can find me on Facebook, usual places. I'm a bit more active on Twitter nowadays, now that Elon's doing his thing. But yeah, just I love connecting with people. I love doing these shows. I love all of you, Robert. I'm so great to connect with you. Like I say, in person is wonderful. You think you're an amazing guy, and Megan and Sharnael too. I love you all very, very much, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Yeah, I hope to have all of you on my show sometime too. It'll be a good time.
I'm
Make
there.
it happen.
Do it. Awesome. Thank you all for your amazing comments and your support. And thank you, Robert and Megan and Craig. And thank you for coming to the membership thing. Well, I'll get you some dates on that. Maybe we could do something in December. Well, it's already December. Shoot.
It is December.
Yeah. It's the first. Oh,
it's Christmas time.
Yes, but you guys are amazing. Everyone who's helped support and liked and loved and all the beautiful comments. Someone was asking, when do we get together? We have a weekly show on Thursdays at noon every week. For those of you who are new to the channel, we welcome you. It's a little bit late, but we welcomed at the beginning too. And I look forward to seeing you guys. And if I don't see you guys until next week, then have a really good one. And we will talk to you guys later. Have a good week. Thank you again so much for letting us hear your experience. I don't like to say hear your story, because when people talk to me and say we want to hear your story, something about that irks me, because I'm like, it's not a story. It happened. It's an experience. And so, Robert, I enjoy and love and your humility and just your presence and hearing your experience. And I treasure that so much. And thank you for your time today. I love you guys. You're beautiful. And we'll talk soon.